Once more we begin to read. This time, with Escapades of Fay Willows, Book 2. Looking around the back of his library, you spy a couple of books with Elvian-style coverings. Intrigued by this oddity appearing in a place like this, you open one to examine its contents, and verify that it was indeed produced in Shaloran lands. What are books like these doing in Ziggur? You decide to start reading, and see what secrets they might hold. Chapter 1. At the Gates. While on the surface the Nargols appear to be in total control of the situation within their capital, underneath it all, this was very much not the case. In order to attempt to mitigate trouble, they actively attempted to confiscate any and all magical items they could find from refugees entering the city, and hid away their leaders for their parts in the Spellblaze. Spellcasters in their army too were sent underground, mindful of the dangers they were in, but also not wishing to incite angry citizens further. I descended slowly and carefully down the hillside, crossing over the river where some stones emerged that I could step on to help avoid the water. Making my way over the burned grass, I joined with the procession of refugees making their way toward the city gates. I had to wait a long while, as the guardsmen thoroughly inspected wagons and asked questions of those passing through. While it seemed no one was being turned away, drawing closer I saw one dwarf begin to holler as a guard carried away one of his items. The dwarf was still bawling when she was allowed entry, a torrent of profanity escaping from her with every step she took inside. After a dozen more or so in front of me were processed by the guards, I was finally next. I immediately held out the papers I received from the Shaloran General, the eyes of the guardsmen nearest to me growing wide as they saw the insignia on them. Motioning to another guard to come, they quickly took the paper from my hands, then moved off a bit to reread it. They talked to each other in a hushed tone before a new guard then quickly ran off with the paper to a nearby tower. Not too long after, the guard was returned with another halfling. Judging from the immaculate armor that this halfling wore, I realized right away that she must be their superior. She walked towards me with a slow, meticulous pace, her gaze seemingly analyzing me fully with each step. Standing in front of me, her eyes looked up into mine as I looked down on her. Then she turned away all of a sudden, making some sort of gesture toward the guardsman as she walked away, the other guard then approaching me to put their hands out. Sensing that I should give the chest now, I pulled it out of my pack to hand it over. Giving a quick nod as he received the chest, the guard hurried away through the gate and dashed around the wall out of sight. The first guardsman then approached and in polite tones stated, "Welcome to Nargol Kingdom." As I was pushed through the gate, I instantly saw a great many tents and hastily constructed shanties as far as the eye could see. There were many refugees sitting around, their eyes looking longingly in numerous directions. Some lifelessly stared toward the west or north, likely to summons that they had been forced to come from. Others seemed to stare blankly toward the sky, perhaps wondering if, or waiting for, more death to fall from it. I soon caught sight of the other guard as they returned to pass through the front of the gates, once more ready to continue with the searches and queries of those still seeking entry into the Nargol capital. Saddened by the sight of all this, along with the sense of loss that hung in the air, I decided to move on. I navigated myself toward a wayfarers district, finding rows of ruins on either side of the street. Some of the destroyed buildings featured collapsed roofs and walls, others had huge cracks in their foundations. I could see a family of halflings through the open gaps of one of them. The small eyes of the children watched me as I passed by. Further down the road, a wooden sign for a tavern lay on the ground, and the sounds of raucous activity could be heard from somewhere nearby. Feeling somewhat peckish at this point, I made my way toward the sign to find a building, and hoped that they may have some food to eat. A motley collection of halflings, humans, and dwarves stood or sat at various tables inside the establishment. More lively than the refugees and residents outside, the patrons conversed over their meals, gambled, and engaged in other leisurely activities. As I entered, one human in particular took notice of my arrival. "Hey, aren't you that dwarf from before?" said the human. "Yes, it is you!" Wondering who this human was as he approached, I suspected him of perhaps being insane. Cueing in on this, he quickly stated in a defensive tone, "Ah, perhaps you don't recognize me. I'm the messenger that happened to be in that inn up north. You probably remember me arguing with that elder old halfwit from before." I clenched my teeth a bit, wondering if I might be in trouble. Again, however, the human made another calming statement. Don't worry. I don't think you'll find anyone disagreeing with what you did to him, and I would think of doing the same anyway. Someone would have silenced him sooner or later. Curious as to what the messenger just said, I cautiously replied, What do you mean? To this the messenger raised an eyebrow, revealing his crystal clear, light blue eyes. What? The messenger stated. You think that anyone would stop someone like that halfling from being killed? No one cares about what you did. Such incidents are commonplace nowadays. Soon smiling at me, the messenger began to gesture toward a nearby seat. I wasn't much interested in chatting with him, but thinking perhaps he may be able to inform me of a bit of current events, I decided to accept his offer. I moved to sit down and ordered a supper dish to dine on, allowing the messenger to make small talk as I ate. He would note the havoc wrought upon the various nearby regions, viciously attacking the mages within each of his censuses, and lamenting the loss of many of his friends. Oddly enough, the messenger didn't give me his name, or ask for my own, perhaps being at least somewhat knowledgeable of foreign customs. I didn't actually notice this when conversing with him, only realizing it due to later events that would unfold. Chapter 2. Exchange of Information. You know, it is really hard to know someone. The messenger was a good example of this, as I would soon find out. I pegged him for being a disgruntled human that had suffered greatly because of Spellblaze. In reality, he was much more than just disgruntled, and I believe he may have been a member of the group instigating the Spellhunt. I'm sure he perished as part of a nefarious plot inside that storehouse, but did he die willingly? That's the real question I think about now in regards to him. Finishing my last bite, I decided to probe the messenger for information. Upon the completion of his last tirade, I asked, So how are things faring here? A sigh escaped the man as he answered. Well, the Nargols appear to have everything under control. They are managing to get enough provisions for all the refugees to me in. Even managed to procure some rather good stuff for those dwarves. I have to say, it was quite a surprise to see them out here. It makes me wonder if the dwarves might have any more homes elsewhere on the continent nearby. Hard to really know, what with how secretive they are. While I wasn't exactly interested in the dwarves, that last statement disconnected quite a bit from what I knew about them. From my knowledge of the dwarves, they all lived in the Iron Throne, or at least cities nearby to it. Questioning the messenger on this, he explained. Well, the dwarven refugees you see arriving here, they had a hidden dwelling over there in the Western Mountains. The Kornaks were completely ignorant that they had taken up residence so close to them, and the dwarves likely would have happily kept it all hush-hush. Unfortunately for the dwarves, they were forced to show themselves, since the blasted mages caused sand to flood the lands over there. Satisfied with the answer, I then remembered the dwarf I saw when first entering the city. I wondered if perhaps the messenger might know something about what that was all about. Thinking about it, I asked, You wouldn't happen to know anything regarding the items the dwarves might be carrying that the guards at the city gates would take away? The messenger still shrugged. Likely it was carrying some items of arcane properties that encrusted mages enchanted long ago, the messenger said. Those dwarves seem to be getting the worst treatment in regards to that. What with the little care they give towards wearing items contaminated with magic or not. Shaking his head, the messenger then mused aloud. You know, the regents are actually attempting to confiscate items of magical origin, a means of appeasement to placate the halflings that were already living here. They say that's too dangerous for civilians to carry such items. Personally, I say it's too dangerous for anyone to be carrying such items, them included. Of course, the regents are too arrogant to bar fellow halflings living in the city already, in regards to giving up such items, expecting them to voluntarily give them up, if at all. Really, it's just the dwarves, the halfling refugees from outside the city, and us humans getting our possessions taken away. The human proceeded to laugh as he finished saying those words. The messenger stopped laughing as a human in dark cloak approached and leaned down to say something to him. The messenger nodded to the figure, upon which he said, I'll catch up later. Relay back to me the plan when we are ready. To this, the human in dark cloak bowed and moved away from us, hurrying over to another table of a couple halflings, then a table of a dwarf, before disappearing in the crowds outside. The halflings and dwarf then finished their food, packed up their belongings, and quietly left in short fashion after. Wondering just who this human was, I looked over to see the examined blue eyes of the messenger looking towards me. In a relaxed voice, the messenger said, Don't mind them. We're having such a nice conversation to have the others ruin it. At that point, I realized that there was much more to this human than I initially thought, and wondered if I might be more dangerous than I was duly given him credit for. Perhaps a bit rashly, I decided to see just how much this man knew. So I quietly stated, You wouldn't happen to have any plans to deal with Shaloran. Almost instantly the man's stance and posture changed. Before a new tone, he continued to speak. Oh, the messenger started. Wouldn't it be so great to wipe those miserable louts from the face of Yal? I assume you likely left your force because you know they are responsible, wanting nothing more than to bathe in their blood for what they have done. Almost us all. In due time, they will be made to pay in full for the unleashing of Spellblaze and Maj'Eyal. Cautiously, I asked in as angry voice as I could muster. Spellblaze? I said. Is that what they call it? Quickly conferring this back to me. Indeed. Or so I've been told by my friend. The one who came by our table just now, actually. Seeing as how the man liked to talk, I waited for him to feed me more information. I allowed him to speak again. I tell you what, the messenger began anew. Perhaps you should come with me to a little gathering of like-minded fellows. We've got a plan that we'll be putting into motion soon, looking to ensure nature never suffers as badly as I'm sure you, a Falor, has felt to suffer. You see, while the Shaloran are most duly responsible, it isn't like none of your races knew about their so-called grand plan. Every race, save for perhaps the dwarves, has some knowledge of the Spellblaze. Obviously, the messenger was likely part, or at least affiliated with, this group that the Shaloran general had feared. I could tell that the messenger was most definitely in on whatever schemes they were orchestrating too, possibly ones of ill intent behind him, as well. I considered going with him, but I wasn't really interested in participating in whatever clandestine activity they were going to partake in, and I could sense a feeling of danger worrying me away. I thank you for the offer, but I must decline, I finally said. To this I got another raised eyebrow. The messenger was showing off his blue eyes once more. Really? The messenger stayed back in disbelief. I would think a Falor such as yourself would jump at the chance to exact retribution against those who defile nature, as has been done. You are a fellow defender of nature, right? His words gave me pause for a moment, but I simply got up to leave. I remember him calling out as I exited the building. Should you change your mind, you'll be welcome as an initiate for sure. Looking up to the sky, I saw the sun beginning to set, and went to find a place to stay the night. After locating an inn and purchasing a room, I decided at daybreak tomorrow I would go to the market to buy food, rations, and supplies for my journey home. I then slept soundly until early in the morning, before the sun had begun to rise, when the sounds of screaming suddenly filled my ears. Wondering what was going on, I got up to look out the window of my room, and saw fire and smoke rising from a large structure in the distance. Chapter 3. Blazing Madness. In the market, I purchased a modest amount for the purposes of forcing my way back to Dwarf lands. I bought about 3 weeks worth of nourishment for myself, thinking I might explore a little bit before finally arriving home. I also procured a fine utility knife and a hatchet, both made of high quality steel. I wasn't sure I really need this much for my journey. I perhaps could have trekked over the entire Maj'Eyal of it. I never imagined, however, what role everything I obtained in that market was soon going to play in my immediate future. Out to my window, I saw many local inhabitants of the nearby buildings running to help deal with the fire. They quickly got to work in clearing off the area, looking to prevent the burning embers from spreading further. Despite their efforts though, many homes would still end up being enveloped by flames. Before long, many souls arrived and pushed back everyone, including those trying to help put out the fire. For a brief time, it was left to burn, though soon began to diminish. Perhaps some mages had come out of hiding, and they had used water magic and secrets to drown it out? It is hard to think of any other explanation as to how the blaze was so effectively extinguished. As the fires began to simmer out, some of the soldiers moved in to inspect the burnt-out remains for anyone who may not have escaped from the fire destruction. They removed many burnt individuals, some who looked to be on death's door, others who were clearly dead. After that was done, the soldiers moved in to investigate the remains of the structure that everything sparked off from. I noticed the soldiers pulled out several bundles wrapped in blankets, coming to learn later that those bundles were remains of those suspected of starting a fire. Whether by accident or on purpose, they had been killed by their own act of arson. I would also learn that those killed consisted of a human, 2 halflings, and a dwarf. I'm certainly glad I left the messenger when I did. I remained in my room watching everything below until the sun appeared in the sky. When I finally left, I talked with the innkeeper about the event, learning that the structure hit by the arson was the one that housed many of the possessions that had been taken away from the refugees. After leaving the inn, I overheard conversations from many of them in the street. From the communication of some halflings I passed, I learned that nearly every arcane item stored within the storehouse had apparently been lost. Other folk on the street murmured about other insights, such as the residents suspected of being killed, to the act itself being a deliberate undertaking. The fire would be talked about continually as I made my way toward the Nargol market. Even there, as I went about acquiring what I needed to continue my journey, many of the merchants and my patrons continued to talk about the blaze. Finishing up my purchases, it was at this point I overheard a patron opine about how the refugees seemed to be behaving strangely. Drawn in to ask about what was said, the halfling who appeared to be of calm work, despite the fine clothes he wore, turned with a befuddled look in my direction. "Yes, I'm from Laura," I said with a sigh. "What's up with the refugees?" The halflings quickly responded. "Indeed you are. Well, I don't really know. They seem quite calm, sort of at peace, despite many of them having their belongings go up in smoke. Their emotions don't really match with their situation. Something curious has happened." The halfling abruptly stopped talking, snapping his head up with a concerned expression. His eyes grew wide with fear before turning around to sprint in the other direction, the yelling behind me now becoming audible. Spinning around, I saw a mob of ragged refugees rushing through the stores themselves, ripping and tearing at everything they could. Their eyes looked wild and bloodshot, their mouths seemingly letting loose unending screams, and they seemed to show no semblance of self-preservation. Wood was smashed and cloth torn as the mob moved into the market. I escaped in the opposite direction, but patrons and merchants who couldn't get away were knocked down and trampled. A few attempted to stand up to the refugees. They would end up attacked and beaten, left bloody and bruised on the ground, or worse. The madness continued for several minutes before the first guards appeared to restore order. It took the guards some additional time to assemble themselves, within which the mob continued to wreck a good deal of the stalls. When the guards finally moved in to clear them out, many of the refugees scattered, leaving debris and injured people all over the place. As order was restored to the scene, some guards came to check to see if I was alright. A guardswoman then pulling me aside to interrogate me on what had happened. I relayed back to the halfling what had unfolded, detailing the unnatural behaviors exhibited by the refugees. After telling my account, I was directed to leave the area. Moving away from the carnage, I wondered what other displays of chaos I might see if I remained in Nargol capital. While I evaded danger twice, it could have very well been me getting trampled and knocked aside in that market, or too close to a building that suddenly goes up in flames. I made a decision then and there to begin making my way toward the city gates to leave. As I made my way through the streets though, I noticed a gathering mob of refugees and even some citizens in front of me. I should have headed past them, but beyond them I heard a voice ringing up above. "The time has come for action, but must be directed at the source of those behind all the harm." I stopped and turned my head as I heard the words, something compelling to stay, to listen to what was being said. Drawn in by the voice, I began to make my way toward the outskirts of the crowd. Chapter 4. Despicable Atrocities. Was it anger against magic that drove people to commit the acts of violence in the aftermath of Spellblaze? Or was it perhaps the deplorable situations they found themselves in because of it? While I can't say I'm an expert on humans, halflings, or dwarves, the depravity I would witness on a street leading up to Nargol Kingdom would go beyond what I expect possible for any sentient being to do. As I peered in toward the crowd, the voice rang out again, saying, "Aimlessly your anger is directed against those who deserve it. I say direct against the source of all the tragedies that have been inflicted." I began to push my way through the crowd, wondering who the speaker was and what they were speaking about. "Wherever magic is found," the voice continued, "it will eventually fail. Hardship soon to follow after. The fire from this morning was an example of this. A bunch of refugees breaking into the warehouse where their confiscated magical items were stored, lighting the building on fire in their hubris, and torching the many homes of those nearby. I wouldn't be surprised if the ignition point itself were the result of those arcane items being mishandled." Making my way toward the center of the crowd, I looked up to see a halfling and a human. They wore a couple of masks to hide their identities, but I recognized the dark cloak worn by the human. Judging from the fact that the human was raising her arms, I assumed they were speaking. I can't say for sure though, the masks they wore covered their facial expressions and shrouded their identities well. "The results of the fire killed many of those sleeping within their beds nearby," the voice began again. "More lives killed by magic. The only good thing that can be said of the incident was that many of those same magical items they sought to take were destroyed in the ensuing aftermath, no longer staining the world with their taint, having gone up in smoke." It felt as if I was hearing the words through my mind. the voice resonating within my head. The anger also evident behind the words as well. I saw those around me being swayed by what was said. Many began to say such things as masters of blame and down with magic. Of course! The voice boomed. You need not be told about the devastation you've already seen firsthand. Much like the actions that led to the warehouse being burned down, it was the Shaloran mages that unleashed the destruction, that ravaged the lands and warped the skies in the fiasco they named of Spellblaze. It is as I continue to say, wherever magic is found, it will eventually fall and bring catastrophe. The voice began to speak faster, and with more passion as it continued on. There can be no denying that we would be better off free from the effects of magic, lest we see these calamities continue to repeat. The Nargol regions, however, will take no action against the halflings already living within the city. If we are to protect our world, then we will have to take up the task ourselves. Any artifact or item showing even the slightest hint of magical nature must be identified and promptly destroyed, lest we risk another event like today. We must also see to it that those who practice or who have any connection to the deployed activities of the arcane are dealt with as well, lest we allow them to hear sarcasm in our inner arrogance. By this point, the crowd is beginning to chant such phrases as destroy the arcane, kill the spellcasters, and end the magic arts. I myself was also beginning to feel the sentiment too, though resisted the urge to join in. Soon a voice began to issue instructions, demanding wood be brought into the street and justice be enacted. The crowd began to disperse through the nearby buildings before re-emerging with the requested wood and piling on the ground. More masked individuals began to step forward, carrying stakes of wood on their shoulders and also large bundles of rope at their sides. I was puzzled as these stakes were erected toward the sky within the piles of wood. This practice was completely foreign to a Falora like myself. While the stakes were being placed, the voice began to give out names of those guilty within the city. A new instruction was given. Bring those named here, along with any magical belongings that could be found. Before long, groups of the crowd made their way into houses, even into tents of refugees. They proceeded to bring back many of those I assumed to be named. Calling out in confusion and terror, those individuals were dragged on the ground toward the piles of wood. The voice's next instruction then came. Tie them to the stakes, cast their offending trinkets at their feet. The crowd immediately grabbed the rope on hearing this, restraining those named, and a swarm of items were also disposited. By this point, the masked human with the dark cloak would leave, and the rest of the masked cohort would take over. As if guided by some twisted force, allegations of magical wrongdoings were made by those wearing masks against those who were bound to the wood. Sometimes individual items were picked up, and by some warped practice they were made to produce sickly glows. Those deemed guilty were kicked and beaten by the crowd, unable to defend themselves as they remained tied. When the accusations finished up, the humans with the dark cloak would again come forward, now with unlit torches in each hand. It was at this point I began to piece together what this was all for. The halfling lighting the torches, causing them to dance with flame. What happened next I still remember vividly in my mind, as if burned by the front torches that glide through the air, and a new stirring blaze that spread. Those bound by the rope began to let loose the torrent screams, the smoldering inferno rising and causing their skin to blacken and burn. As this was happening, I could hear a horrendous voice let loose a wretched cry that echoed all around me. The rest of the crowd followed suit, their symphony of cries building to a crescendo, to the point that they were the only ones being heard, their victims' wails dying out as they slowly ceased to live. I remember retching uncontrollably as I staggered away to the side of the building, disgusted by the sight. The horribleness of the act truly sickened me to my very being, but I was perhaps more unnerved by what was said next. You all have done well, but it'll take more than this to make our world safe, the voice said. If you wish, you can join us in a fight for nature. We can ensure that all arcane users, those who have brought this misery, such as those guilty here. The voice paused for a moment before finishing. Will burn. The voice said in an almost subdued sounding manner before continuing. Find me! Be welcomed as a new initiate to our cause. Many of those with masks then faded into the crowds, those in the crowd seemingly starting to bubble around, as if now gasped as to what had occurred. Despite this, I remembered those last words said by the voice, strongly recalling the messenger had also used the word initiate too. A group of Nargol guards would eventually appear, guiding themselves to disperse the crowd, like they had done before in the market. The crowd offered little resistance to the encroaching force that rushed forward. Many of the participants fled into dark alleys of buildings or through the tents of refugees. As the guards took control of the area, their attention turned toward the simmering fire and the smoldering bodies. Cries of anguish came from the individuals behind the guards, which I assumed to be loved ones of friends of those killed. At this point, I could take no more of what was unfolding in front of me. I turned to leave the area, and the fiery carnage had taken place. As I passed by a tent, however, a hand reached out of its opening, pulling me inside. Chapter 5. Psionic Trickery. I'm told that what I likely witnessed in that tent was the result of a psionic slaver. Using my own psyche, a manifested image of my own thoughts emerges that can be used against me. I have been lucky, having managed to free myself from the mental hold by seeing through the illusion. Had I not done so, it was entirely possible that I could have become enthralled to the slaver's will and made to do their bidding unquestioningly. I hit the ground hard as I landed towards the back of the tent. Dazed, I began to stand to look up at who had thrown me, coming face to face with one of the masked individuals. I assumed they had helped take part in the abhorrent spectacle I had just seen, but I wondered what they wanted with me. Slowly a hand reached up to remove the mask and reveal the face of a human messenger. "Fancy meeting you here!" He laughed as he spoke. "I knew I saw something in you when we conversed in the inn." The messenger continued to laugh as I got up. I must have been a bit of shock from the impact. My vision was fuzzy and hazy, things in the tent seemingly blurred together. Demandingly, I responded to the messenger. "What do you want? Why are you throwing me in here?" The messenger stopped laughing, a calm smile appearing on his face. "Because I would like to have words with you, of course," he said. "What were you doing when you came here? When you came to Nargol Kingdom?" I froze at those words, wondering how much danger I was in. The messenger stood unnaturally silent, his cloudy eyes seemingly reading me, my thoughts of what to say racing through my mind. I started in fright. "I was delivering some medical aid for the Nargols to use?" A hard slap then struck my face from the messenger, sending me reeling to the side. The messenger then declared indeed, before turning his head to shout at me, "From the Shaloran!" Taking a step forward, the messenger gave me a hard kick to my stomach, the force winning me and caused me to fall to the ground. I soon received another whack with the back of a heel to my face, causing blood to stream out. Bending down and picking me up by the hair, the messenger drew me in close to his face, his grey eyes peering into mine. He proceeded to say to me, spitting with both his saliva and his words, "I had thought better of you, since you killed that elder old halfling. I figured you might be a fellow ally, but that isn't the case, is it? We made it down to those Shaloran, beyond that little wall of magic smoke they put up to hide themselves from us. You could have carried out a small portion of nature's wrath, but instead of enacting Neil's fury, you turned your back on it, and sided with those who unleashed the Spellblaze on us." Crying now, I was sobbing tears that mixed with the blood coming on my face. Between sobs I quickly stated, "Enough pain has been felt without adding to it," before my head was smashed into the ground by the messenger. He yelled back with great intensity, "No amount of pain, Fay, will make up for what they have done. Every last one of those Shaloran deserve to die as painful as those we punished." The messenger continued to rant, but hearing my name said, I stopped to think, ignoring the rest of what he had to say. "How did he know my name?" "I never gave it to him, to anyone in Nargol Kingdom, or to any of the Shaloran for that matter." "How do you know my name?" I said to the messenger. His ranting cut off immediately, the messenger looking down at me, his eyes now shimmering between different colors. "Whatever do you mean, Fay?" he faintly replied. "You told me your name back at when... Abruptly the messenger stopped talking. Then his facial expression seemed to fade away, leaving a faceless humanoid with solid black eyes. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew then that this was an imposter. I could feel my senses starting to return with me, and with my closer hand, I grabbed whatever it was that I had been talking to. It struggled to keep a hold of me, trying to keep me down, but I managed to make it fall to the floor. With my other hand, I pulled back and punched repeatedly at its head, until it ultimately faded from existence. I began to re-envision my surroundings, and noticed someone else nearby. I quickly realized it was the human with the dark cloak. The one who had briefly visited the messenger when I was talking to him in the inn. The one who stood in the center of the crowd. The one who likely instigated those barbaric acts I had constantly witnessed since coming to the Nargol Kingdom. Getting up, I said, "Who are you really?" Beginning to back up in the direction to attempt opening, likely to escape now that I was free of whatever had been done to me, the fiend attempted to make an escape. Intent on not letting that happen, I moved the Keshtar cloak and wrenched the villain back. I don't know what happened next, but the following moment I found myself face down in the dirt. I was pinned and unable to move or speak. I attempted to look up at what was above me. I noticed a masked halfling, likely the same one that had been standing with the human during the speech. The human stopped running away, taking a brief moment to survey the situation, before returning with a high step to hover over me. "That was quite unexpected," the human said. "You must have some impressive willpower to resist me, Floor. I'm afraid, though, if I can't bend you to my will, then I'm gonna have to kill you." Analyzing those words in my head, the human reached within their cloak to pull out a small dagger, undoubtedly with which to kill me. I jostled around, attempting to get loose of the halfling's hold, yet somehow, despite the halfling's smaller size, I could not break free. Impressively too, the halfling was doing this with just one of her arms. Taking a dagger in hand, the human pulled back and thrust forward to finish me off. I was sure I would be killed. But in the next instant, I noticed the dagger tumbling in the air. A bit confused at this, it would take me a moment to realize that the halfling, who was still holding me down, had prevented the human from killing me with the other hand. Seemingly just as caught off guard, the human looked dumbfounded with disbelief. Finally regaining her composure, the human turned to face the halfling to ask a simple question in both our minds. "What are you doing?" Chapter 6. Spared. Over time, the Nargols apparently caught the ones behind those twisted incidents, and the other instigators that followed after. They publicly executed those who they believed to be the culprits, and planted their heads in stakes, a warning to those who disturbed the peace. Despite this, though, burning events and other depraved actions would continue for a long time to come in Nargol lands, both in and out of their capital. The messenger may have been killed, but the message they spread persisted. Abruptly, before giving the halfling even a moment to respond, the human began raving. "You don't seriously mean to spare her? She's in league with Shaloran! She's in league with magic!" The human's tone progressively got more emotional as her tirade went on. "Have you forgotten our mission, and what we're charged to do?" the human continued. "This floor is turning her back on nature. She must die!" The human stopped talking as the halfling raised her free hand up. Then in a deeper tone than I would have expected from someone of such a small size, calmly the halfling replied back enough. The human's body shrinking back at this. Though masked, I could sense the dismay from the human's body language. The halfling put down their hand before finally responding with an explanation. "Our mission is to root out the foul practitioners of the arcane, to make sure no further tragedies occur from Magic's failings." The halfling took a deep breath before continuing. "This floor is no spellcast." "So what?" the human interjected with great intensity, cutting off the halfling again. "She's a stretcher of the Shaloran!" the human started ranting again. "The ones who caught the spell!" Once more the halfling put up their hand, and again the human ceased to talk. With the human now firmly silent, I slowly felt some of the pressure on me relax. Somewhat tensely, the human finally turned away and exited through the entrance of the tent. As the human left, I could feel the halfling proceed to get off of me, stepping away and giving me some room. Slowly I made to get up as the halfling turned his head to look in my direction. Coming to my feet, I decided to ask again, "Who are you really?" Turning its body fully towards me, the halfling paused a moment before answering. "Do you wish to truly know?" I paused as this question was put to me. These fanatics have been responsible for the repulsive scenes that I witnessed outside. On top of that, I had been dragged into this tent. That human had even tried to kill me. I felt anger at that moment more than anything else, but something was driving me to seek out an explanation. So I finally replied, "I want to know why." The halfling remained silent, emotions covered by the mask, and her body language indicated nothing to me either. The only thing I could tell about the halfling was the military attire being worn. A complete set of leather armor, with gloves, bracers, boots, and greaves included. Seemingly, we merely stood looking at each other, likely attempting to ponder what was going through the other's mind. What I can tell you for myself, though, was that I was full of rage, and with each passing moment, that fury was building within me. Having enough of the silence and wanting my answer, I was about to begin shouting, before at last the halfling stated, "Because nature has suffered enough, has it not?" The sentence that was uttered struck me deeply. I was directly reminded of the reasons I had headed down to Elvala, of how I initially driven to make my journey. Yet I accepted that the Shaloran had been punished enough when I saw the state they were in. The actions of these masked individuals, though, this seemed less about exacting revenge for what wrong done to nature. No, it seemed closer to a vendetta against the arcane, with the Spellblaze being an excuse to kill practitioners and destroy their works. Regaining my composure, I replied coldly, "Does that justify killing the innocent?" To this I could feel hostility rise within the halfling. I knew I truly hit a nerve. In the following instant, though, all I could feel was pain. I didn't even see the halflings move before I felt the punch connect with my stomach. Looking down, I saw the halfling below, just as the other fist connected with the bottom of my jaw. Stunned by the blow, I stumbled back a bit before falling down. Now looking up at the halfling, I could see the hostile inner emotions emanating towards me, towards the word I just uttered. "Innocent," the halfling coldly said. "There is no innocence in those who pervert nature in her design. There can be no forgiveness for them either." I should have been afraid of the halfling at this point, but my anger came back, fueling me to go forward. "Does that justify the atrocious display I saw outside, then?" I fired back as I bounced back to my feet. "To take random people from their homes, charge them with what you see as wrongdoings, and then set them ablaze?" The halfling dropped a more passive stance before replying. "If you're referring to the people we named, then know that they were all the fathers of nature. Potion brewers, rune masters, a blacksmith who specialized in magical artifact creation, and more than a dozen mages capable of casting spells. We have done great care in identifying various users who twist nature to their whims." The halfling trailed off to take a breath before continuing. "As for how we killed them, a single name to be sent, seared into the hearts and minds of all citizens of this city and elsewhere. Perhaps you may not have the stomach for it. If so, I suggest you go back to your little forest, Valor. This won't be the last example we use with fire that you'll likely see." I don't know what made me more furious at that point. The callous nature of the halfling toward the killed, or his suggestion to simply go back home. What I didn't know was that I was now livid inside, the halfling cueing in on this. Attempting to redirect my anger, the halfling quickly surmised. "Of course, you seem like you made a sterner composition than most, not just in physical fortitude either. Head to our southern shoreline, then turn east. You'll find a path leading towards our base of operations." Bursting the words, I took a moment to scrutinize them in my head. "And why should I do that?" I asked. "You wish to know why, do you not?" the halfling said immediately. "Go talk to our instructors if you truly wish to know who we are." With this, the halfling turned to depart from the tent. My ire had not subsided much, but I made no further attempt to confront the halfling. Battered and bruised, I sank down to the ground and rested a moment after the halfling left. Pulling out one of my infusions, I began to heal my wounds. When I felt I was in better shape, I got up and left the tent. Looking up, I saw the evening sky and decided I would be staying one more night in Nargol Kingdom. I made my way back to the inn where I slept in the bed until noon the next day. When I woke, I headed straight to the gates of the city to make my way out. There, I pondered where my next destination would be, finally deciding to head south.